His wife, the woman he promised to love for eternity, was dying on an operating table just 20 ft away. Her screams had just faded into a terrifying silence. But David Harris wasn't alone in the hallway. His mistress, Chloe, stood beside him, and as the doctor approached with a face like stone, Chloe let out a quiet, sharp laugh. She had won. The obstacle was gone. David was hers. The doctor looked past David, her eyes boring into the mistress, and whispered the 4 words that would turn Chloe's victory into her own personal hell. "We saved the babies. It's twins." The house in Terrytown, Austin, was a monument to good taste. David Harris, a man whose architectural firm was redefining the city skyline, had designed it himself. It was all glass, warm limestone, and clean lines overlooking a verdant swell of the Colorado River. His wife, Sarah Jenkins Harris, had filled it with life. Sarah, a respected art curator, had a warmth that softened David's sharp edges. Their life was by all accounts perfect, except for the silence. For 7 years the house had been quiet. It was a silence punctuated by timed injections, devastating negative pregnancy tests, and the quiet, sterile grief of infertility. They had poured a small fortune into Austin IVF, and their marriage, once a passionate partnership, had become a shared, grueling project. Then, on their 8th try, it worked. Sarah was now 38 weeks pregnant, radiant and heavy with their miracle. The silence was finally gone, replaced by the assembly of a crib, the painting of a nursery, a soft, hopeful sage green, and endless joyful debates over a single name: Oliver. On this last perfect Sunday, Sarah was arranging tiny hand-knitted booties on a shelf. David watched her from the doorway, a knot of something dark and heavy in his stomach. He loved her. God, he loved her. He loved the way she hummed when she was happy, the gentle curve of her spine as she bent over her work. He loved this baby, their baby, with a fierce protective instinct. But he was also a coward. "The new schematic for the 6th Street Tower is a nightmare," he said, loosening his collar. "I'm going to have to pull an all-nighter at the office." Sarah turned her smile only slightly dimmed. "Oh, David again? That's the 3rd time this week." I know, it's just this project. It's make or break. Once this is done, I'm all yours, I promise." He crossed the room, kissed her forehead, and placed a hand on the taut drum of her belly. "And yours, Oliver." The baby kicked as if in protest. Sarah covered his hand with hers. "Okay, just be careful. I love you." "I love you too," David whispered. The lie tasted like ash in his mouth. He didn't drive to the downtown office. He drove to a sleek, impersonal condo building on South Congress. He took the elevator to the 14th floor. The door opened before he could knock. Chloe Sanders didn't wait for him to step inside. She pulled him in by his tie, her mouth finding his. She was all sharp angles, expensive perfume, and thrilling, dangerous ambition. Chloe was a new associate at his firm, 28 years old, and saw David not as a man, but as a prize. "You're late," she murmured against his lips. She was organizing the nursery, he said, his guilt returning. Chloe rolled her eyes, pulling away to pour 2 glasses of wine. "The nursery? How sweet. Did you tell her you're not going to be there to see it? That you're going to be with me?" "Chloe, we talked about this. It's complicated. The baby is coming." "The baby?" She scoffed, handing him the glass. "That's all she has." "I have you. Your mind, your ambition, your future. She's your past, David. A bloated, sentimental past. You know you can't stay. Once the kid is born, you have to choose." He knew she was right. He had to choose. But as he looked at Chloe so fierce and uncompromising, he felt a different kind of trap closing in. The affair, which had started as a reckless escape from the sterile, scheduled world of IVF, had become a second parallel life, and it was a life that was demanding he burned the first one to the ground. "Just not tonight, Chloe. Let's not talk about her tonight," he said, setting the wine down. She smiled, a slow, predatory curving of her lips. "Fine, let's not talk at all." As he fell into her, he forced the image of the sage-green nursery and the tiny hand-knitted booties from his mind. He was a man living two lives, and he was about to find out in the most brutal way possible that you can't build a new life on a foundation of lies. The entire structure was about to come crashing down. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in deception. David Harris moved through his perfect home like a ghost, his body present, his mind 1,000 miles away at a condo on South Congress. He was attentive to Sarah, rubbing her swollen feet, fetching her ice chips, telling her how beautiful she was, and every word of it was true, which only made the lies he told Chloe feel more poisonous. To Chloe, he was the trapped husband, counting the seconds until he could be free. He was building a fantasy with her, a future in a penthouse, trips to Milan, a life unburdened by the domesticity that he claimed was suffocating him. He was two different men, and the strain was making him crack. Sarah, for all her focus on the baby, was not a fool. She had built a career on noticing the details. Others missed the subtle shift in a painter's brush stroke, the hidden meaning in a line, and she saw the changes in David. It wasn't one big thing. It was 1,000 tiny, unraveling threads. It was the way he now showered the moment he came home from working late, when he used to just collapse on the sofa with her. It was the scent of a perfume on his suit jacket. Not hers. Something sharper, musky. Santal 33. It was the ping of his phone, which he now kept face down on the nightstand at 2 a.m. The final thread was an American Express bill. He'd left it on his desk, an oversight born of arrogance. Sarah was looking for a stamp. She saw the charge. Uchi, $480. On a Tuesday night, he had supposedly been eating stale pizza with his draft team. She didn't cry. The shock was too cold for that. She simply sat in his leather office chair, the white rectangle of paper trembling in her hand, and waited for him to come home. He walked in at 7:00 p.m., all smiles, holding a bouquet of Sarah's favorite white poise. "For my two favorite people," he said, leaning in to kiss her. Sarah turned her head. He kissed the air. "What's wrong?" he asked, his smile faltering. She held up the receipt. "How was the spicy tuna?" David's blood ran cold. The color drained from his face. There was no lie big enough to cover this. "Sarah, I can explain. Can you?" Her voice was quiet, but it was the most dangerous sound he had ever heard. "Can you explain the perfume? Can you explain the 2 a.m. text messages? Can you explain, David, how you could do this to me? To us now?" She gestured to her stomach, her hand shaking. It just happened." He stammered, the peonies hanging limply from his hand. "It's this woman at work, Chloe Sanders." "It doesn't mean anything, Sarah. I swear it's been so hard, the IVF everything." "Don't!" she hissed. And now the tears came hot and angry. "Don't you dare use our son as an excuse for this. You think it's been hard for you? I'm the one who's been pumped full of hormones, who's had my body poked and prodded for 7 years. I'm the one carrying this child, and you go find someone new." He had no defense. He just stood there as her grief and rage washed over him. "Who is she?" Sarah finally whispered, wiping her face. "It doesn't matter. It's over. I'll end it tonight. I'll fire her. Sarah, please, look at me. I love you. This baby is my world." Sarah stared at him for a long, agonizing minute. He saw the calculation in her eyes. She was weighing 7 years of love against 1 night of definitive proof. "I don't believe you," she said finally, her voice flat. "I don't believe it's over. But here is what's going to happen. You are going to stop. You are going to delete her number. You are going to end this, and you are going to be here for the birth of your son. We are not going to talk about this again until Oliver is home and safe. I will not bring this child into a broken home. Do you understand me, David? It was more than he deserved. It was a lifeline. He grabbed it. Yes, he said, sinking to his knees, pressing his face to her stomach. Yes, Sarah, anything. It's over, I promise, it's over. But as he held his weeping wife, his phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from Chloe. Thinking of you. Can't wait for tonight. David Harris, the brilliant architect, the coward, the liar, did the one thing he knew how to do. He silenced his phone and held his wife tighter, trapping the lie between them. He didn't end it. He just got better at hiding it. He told Chloe that Sarah was suspicious and that he had to be careful for a few weeks, which only made their stolen moments more illicit, more thrilling for her. Chloe, in her predatory confidence, was fine with this. She knew she had him. It was just a matter of time. Sarah, meanwhile, retreated. She focused on the baby. She stopped asking David where he was. She simply watched the clock, her eyes hollow, and prayed that her family, which hadn't even officially begun, could survive its first mortal wound. The week of Sarah's due date, a heavy, humid stillness settled over Austin. The air was thick, charged with the promise of a storm. It was a perfect mirror for the atmosphere inside the glass house in Terrytown. Sarah was on edge, not just from the pregnancy, but from the palpable tension. David was a caricature of a devoted husband, a man playing a role so hard it was painful to watch. He was home every night by 6 phone-placed screen-up on the counter, but his eyes were distant, and he jumped every time the doorbell rang. The confrontation had changed nothing except to make the silence between them heavier. On Tuesday, Sarah had her 39-week checkup. David had a critical meeting he couldn't miss. It's with the city council, babe. I have to be there. I'll be there for the main event, I promise. It's fine, David, Sarah said, tying her sneakers, her feet so swollen she could barely see them. My mother is taking me. Her mother, Margaret Jenkins, was a woman cut from stern Texas granite. She had never fully trusted David, finding his charm too polished, his ambition too sharp. She arrived in her practical Volvo, took one look at her daughter, and her lips thinned. You look exhausted, Sarah. He's not helping, is he? He's busy, Mom. The 6th Street Tower. Right. The tower, Margaret said the word, dripping with disbelief. At the clinic, Dr. Evelyn Miller, a brisk, brilliant OB-GYN who had guided them through the entire IVF journey, entered the exam room. Her normal, cheerful demeanor was gone. Sarah Margaret, let's get your blood pressure. The cuff hissed. Dr. Miller looked at the reading. She took it again. Sarah, she said, her voice calm but firm, your pressure is 180/110. That's dangerously high. What? But I feel okay. Just tired. That's the scary thing about preeclampsia. I'm also seeing protein in your urine sample. We need to get you to the hospital now. We're not waiting for labor. We're inducing you today. A jolt of panic, cold and electric, shot through Sarah. Today. But David, he's in a meeting. Call him, Dr. Miller said, already pulling off her gloves and typing into her tablet. I'm admitting you to St. David's Medical Center. I'll meet you there in 20 minutes. Margaret was already on the phone, her face grim. David, it's Margaret. Sarah's in trouble. Preeclampsia. They're inducing her now at St. David's. David was in fact in a meeting, but it wasn't with the city council. It was in a dark, plush booth at the W Hotel bar, his leg pressed against Chloe's. They were drinking champagne, celebrating the hypothetical future where he was free. His phone buzzed. Margaret Jenkins. He winced and silenced it. Who's that? Chloe asked, tracing the rim of her glass. No one, just work. The phone buzzed again. Margaret Jenkins. He silenced it again. You're a terrible liar, David. Chloe purred. It's her, isn't it? Before he could answer, the phone buzzed a third time. Sarah. His heart hammered. Sarah never called him when she was with her mother. He picked it up. Sarah, is everything okay, David? It was Margaret's voice, sharp with terror. I'm driving her. She's God. David, she says she can't see properly. Her vision is blurred. Get to the hospital. St. David's now. The line went dead. The blood drained from David's face. Blurred vision, high blood pressure. He'd read the pamphlets. This was bad. This was red alert bad. I have to go, he said, throwing cash on the table. What? Chloe's face twisted in rage. You're kidding me. She's faking it, David. It's a ploy to get you back. She's not faking. He snapped his voice raw with a sudden real fear. She's at the hospital. It's the baby. It's happening. He ran from the bar, leaving Chloe sitting alone in the booth. She sat there for a full minute, the champagne tasting sour. He had left her. When it came down to it, when the real thing happened, he ran back to his wife. He chose her. A cold, narcissistic fury, deeper and more potent than any she had ever felt, settled over her. She was not a woman to be discarded. She was not the other woman. She was the main woman, and she was going to prove it. She pulled out her phone and called an Uber. St. David's Medical Center, she told the driver, her voice perfectly calm. And please drive quickly. It's an emergency. She was going to the hospital. She was going to find David. She was going to force the choice right then and there. She would not be hidden. She would not be ignored. The storm had finally broken, and Chloe Sanders intended to be the one left standing when the floodwaters receded. The maternity ward at St. David's was a place of frantic, controlled chaos. When Margaret's Volvo screeched to a halt at the emergency entrance, Sarah was barely conscious. A team was waiting. They rushed her to a labor and delivery room, alarms already beeping. Dr. Evelyn Miller was there, scrubbed and focused. She's in severe pre-eclampsia, bordering on eclampsia, she snapped to the nurses. Get me a magnesium sulfate drip now and prep for an emergency C-section. She's crashing. This isn't just pre-eclampsia. I think it's HELP syndrome. HELPy syndrome. The acronym was a death sentence. Hemolysis. Elevated liver enzymes. Low platelet count. It was the body's ultimate betrayal. A catastrophic failure of its systems in response to pregnancy. David sprinted through the automatic doors, his heart threatening to burst from his chest. He found the maternity floor and saw Margaret, pale and trembling outside L&D room 3. Where is she? Is she okay? They took her, Margaret whispered, her eyes burning with hatred. They're trying to stabilize her liver, her platelets. Oh God, David. She dissolved into sobs. A nurse, Brenda, a kind woman with weary eyes, stepped out. Mr. Harris, your wife is asking for you. David pushed past Margaret and into the room. It was like a war zone. Machines shrieked, and Sarah, his beautiful, warm Sarah, was unrecognizable. She was swollen, her skin a sickly pale, and her eyes were wild with terror. David, she cried, grabbing his hand with a strength he didn't know she possessed. I can't feel my hands. I'm so scared. David, the baby, just save our baby. Promise me. Save Oliver. I promise. I promise. He sobbed, kissing her clammy forehead. We're both right here. We love you. Mr. Harris, you need to step out. We're taking her to the O now. Dr. Miller commanded her voice, leaving no room for argument. They wheeled Sarah out. David stumbled back into the hallway, his legs giving out. He collapsed onto a cold plastic waiting room chair, his head in his hands. He was a fraud. His wife was dying, and the last coherent thing he had done was lie to her. Mr. Harris. He looked up. His blood turned to ice. Chloe Sanders was standing in front of him. She was wearing a black silk blouse and leather pants, looking utterly out of place like a vulture in a dove's nest. "Chloe," he whispered, horrified. "What? What are you doing here? You can't be here." "I can't," she said, her voice dangerously low. "You ran out on me, David. You left me in that bar like I was nothing. I'm not nothing, David. I'm your future." "She," Chloe gestured contemptuously toward the O doors, "is your past. I'm here to make sure you remember that. Get out," David hissed, jumping to his feet. He grabbed her arm, trying to pull her toward the elevators. "This is a hospital. Your wife is dying." Chloe's voice rose, turning heads at the nurse's station. Nurse Brenda's eyes widened. "And you know what? It's for the best. She's weak. She was holding you back. Now you and I can finally be together. You and me." And she paused, a strange, triumphant smile playing on her lips. She had been saving this. This was her ace. "And our baby," Chloe said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. David froze. "What?" "I'm pregnant, David. 10 weeks. I was going to tell you tonight over champagne. Congratulations, Daddy. It looks like you're going to be a father after all." The world tilted. Pregnant. Chloe was pregnant. His wife was on an operating table fighting for her life, and the life of their son, and his mistress was here telling him she was also pregnant. It was a nightmare. It was a hell of his own making. "Chloe, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly. You're mine. That thing in there is just a complication, and complications," she said, her eyes glinting, "can be removed." "You're a monster," David breathed, recoiling from her. "I'm a survivor," she corrected, "and I'm not leaving. I'm going to wait right here for the good news." Before David could respond, before he could physically throw her out of the hospital, the doors to the operating hallway swung open. Nurse Brenda was walking quickly toward Dr. Miller, who was at the scrub sink. "Doctor," Brenda said, her voice low but urgent. "That woman in the hall, the one in the black blouse, she was just screaming at Mr. Harris. She said that thing in there is just a complication and that she's pregnant with his baby." Dr. Miller stopped scrubbing. She slowly turned her eyes over the top of her surgical mask, hardening into chips of ice. She had just seen Sarah Harris's platelet count. She knew what was happening. She had seen this kind of tragedy before, but the cruelty in the waiting room was a new, horrifying variable. "Keep her away from L&D, Dr. Miller ordered. "Call security if you have to and get Mr. Harris back in here. He needs to prepare himself." The battle in the O was failing. The war in the waiting room was just beginning. Time dissolved into a thick, syrupy dread. David sat on one side of the waiting room near the O doors, his body vibrating with guilt and fear. Chloe, defiant, had taken a seat on the far side by the elevators, casually scrolling through her phone as if she were waiting for a table at a restaurant. Margaret had gone to the chapel, unable to bear the sterile, terrifying proximity to the operating room. David prayed. He prayed to a God he hadn't spoken to in years. He prayed for Sarah. He prayed for Oliver. He prayed for this nightmare to end, for the clock to rewind, for a chance to undo the last 6 months of his life. An hour passed, then 2. The atmosphere on the floor shifted. Nurses moved with a new grim urgency. David heard a code blue paged over the intercom, followed by L&D operating room 2, Sarah's room. He shot to his feet. A nurse gently pushed him back. "Sir, please wait." He watched helpless as the crash cart was slammed through the doors. He heard a new level of frantic shouted commands from inside, and then a sound that would haunt him forever. A long, single, continuous beep, the sound of a flat line. Chloe looked up from her phone, a flicker of interest in her eyes. She saw David's white-knuckled grip on the chair. She saw the panic. She saw the tears streaming down his face, and then the O-doors opened. Dr. Evelyn Miller walked out. She was no longer a surgeon. She was an executioner. She had stripped off her bloody gloves and her scrub cap. Her short gray hair was matted with sweat. Her face was a mask of profound professional grief. She walked directly to David. He already knew. He was already shaking his head. No, no, no. Mr. Harris, David. Dr. Miller's voice was low, tired. We did everything we could. Sarah's HELP syndrome was catastrophic. Her liver failed. She developed DIAC. She was bleeding from everywhere. We couldn't stop it. We gave her 30 units of blood, but she threw a massive embolism. The doctor took a deep breath. I'm so sorry. We lost her. Sarah, she's gone. David Harris shattered. A sound left his body that wasn't human. It was a raw animal wail of pure agony. He collapsed his body, folding in on itself, his hands clawing at his face. He had killed her. His lies, his stress, his betrayal. He had killed her. And from across the waiting room came another sound. A laugh. It was quiet, sharp, and utterly unmistakable. A single triumphant bark. David's head snapped up. Chloe was standing now, a hand partially covering her mouth, but her eyes were dancing with victory. She had won. The wife was dead. The obstacle was gone. David was grieving, yes, but he would get over it. He was hers. All of him. And his fortune. She walked over her heels, clicking on the linoleum, her face a perfect false mask of sympathy. Oh, David, darling, I'm so terribly sorry for your loss. What a tragedy. David, in his shock and grief, could only stare at her. Dr. Miller's eyes, which had been fixed on David, slowly swiveled to Chloe. She recognized her instantly, the woman from the hallway. The complication. Her gaze was so cold, so filled with contempt it could have frozen fire. Chloe's smirk faltered under the weight of it. Mr. Harris, Dr. Miller said, her voice suddenly sharp, deliberately cutting through Chloe's performance. She did not take her eyes off the mistress. Mr. Harris, we couldn't save Sarah, she paused, but we saved the babies. David's head, buried in his hands, came up slowly. What? Babies? No, it's a boy, Oliver. Dr. Miller finally turned her gaze back to David, and for the first time, a flicker of softness entered her eyes. It was a surprise, she said, her voice gentle, but loud enough for Chloe to hear every word. One baby was positioned directly behind the other on every ultrasound. It's rare, but it happens. We didn't know until we got in. She knelt, putting a hand on David's shoulder. You have a son, David. He's tiny, but he's a fighter. And you have a daughter. It's twins. The 4 words hit the air. It's twins. Chloe's face, which had been alight with triumph, went utterly, dreadfully pale. The smirk vanished, replaced by a mask of chalk-white horror. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Twins. Not one inconvenient grieving child. Two babies. 2 permanent, unbreakable living links to the sainted dead wife. 2 heirs to the Harris legacy. 2 tiny, screaming, expensive reminders of Sarah forever. Her own pregnancy, which she had seen as her trump card, her checkmate, was suddenly a liability. She wasn't an exciting new life. She was just the other one, the one with the 3rd baby. David was no longer a grieving widower hour she could comfort and claim. He was a single father of newborn twins. Her victory, so sweet just seconds before, had turned to ash in her mouth. She backed away, stumbling, her eyes wide with panic. She had laughed, and now the universe was laughing back. The days that followed were a blur of antiseptic smells, the rhythmic beeping of NICU machinery, and a crushing, suffocating guilt. The twins, Oliver and Olivia, were impossibly small, their bodies lost in a tangle of wires and tubes inside their separate incubators. They were Sarah's. They had her delicate eyelids, her fine hair, and David, looking at them through the clear plastic, felt nothing but a profound, hollow sense of being an imposter. Sarah's funeral was a quiet, agonizing affair. Margaret Jenkins stood at the graveside, her face a stone carving of grief. She did not speak to David. She did not look at him. She simply accepted the folded flag. Sarah had been an Air Force brat and stared at the polished casket, her hatred for the man who had broken her daughter's heart, a palpable physical force. David was alone. And then he wasn't. Chloe Sanders, after her initial shock, had regrouped. She had a new strategy. She showed up at his Terry townhouse a week after the funeral, dressed in modestial black. She brought a casserole. "David," she said softly, stepping inside before he could stop her. "I know you're in pain, and I know I was shocked at the hospital. I didn't mean to react that way. It was just all so much." David, who was operating on 3 hours of sleep and pure self-loathing, just stared at her. "You laughed, Chloe." "I was hysterical." She lied her eyes wide with feigned innocence. "It was also awful. Sarah, and then twins. I broke, but I'm here now. We're in this together, David. You, me, and our baby." She placed a hand on her flat stomach. "We can raise them all together, a new family." David looked at her, at this woman who had called his dying wife a complication, and felt a revulsion so deep it almost made him gag. "Get out," he whispered. "What? David, don't be like this. I'm pregnant with your child." "Get out of my house! Get out of my life!" he roared, the first real emotion other than grief flashing through him. "You laughed when she died. You stood there and you were happy. Get out before I call the police." Chloe's face hardened. The mask was off. "You'll regret this, David. You can't just throw me away. I'm carrying your baby. I'm not going anywhere." "We'll see about that," he said, slamming the door in her face. He was trapped, a single father to 2 premature babies he barely felt connected to, and a pregnant, monstrous mistress who was threatening to ruin him. His nightmare was only just beginning. 2 weeks later, he was called into a meeting at St. David's. He assumed it was about the twins' discharge plan. But when he walked in, it wasn't just Dr. Miller. A grim-faced hospital administrator, Robert Polson, and a man in a suit, Dr. Aaron Patel, the head of hospital genetics, were also at the table. "Mr. Harris, please sit down," Polson said, his tone formal. "Is it the twins? Are they okay?" David asked, his heart seizing. "The twins are stabilizing," Dr. Miller said gently. This is about something else. David, when you and Sarah went through your IVF treatment at Austin IVF, there were multiple cycles, correct?" "Yes," David said, confused. 8 over the years. This last one was the one that worked." Dr. Patel cleared his throat and opened a file. "Mr. Harris, as part of the NICU workup for premature twins, we ran a full genetic panel just to rule out any congenital issues." He paused and looked at the administrator, who nodded. "Mr. Harris, Doctor," Patel continued, "during the course of this routine screening, we found an anomaly, a genetic discrepancy. We cross-referenced the twins' DNA with the sample you provided at admission." He took a deep breath. "David, the genetic markers show you are not the twins' biological father." The silence in the room was absolute. David just stared. "What? That's impossible. That's absurd. We did IVF. It was our embryos." "No," Dr. Miller said, her voice aching with sympathy. "It was Sarah's egg, but the sperm sample? It wasn't yours." Polson, the administrator, cut in his voice, all business. "It appears there was a catastrophic error at the fertility clinic. Austin IVF is a separate entity, but they have privileges at our hospital. We've cross-referenced their records for that day. It appears your sample was misplaced, and another patient's sample was used to fertilize Ms. Jenkins's eggs. David couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. The babies, Oliver and Olivia, the only things left of Sarah. They weren't his. His sacrifice, his betrayal, his lies, the stress that he was convinced had contributed to Sarah's death. It was all for nothing. He had destroyed his life and lost his wife for another man's children. Who? David finally choked out. A couple, Dr. Miller said softly. Mark and Jessica Bishop. They were also patients. They've been trying for 10 years. They were told their last cycle failed. David Harris began to laugh. It was a broken, horrifying sound echoing the one he'd heard in the waiting room. He was a man who had everything, and in the span of 3 weeks had been left with absolutely, cosmically nothing. The news from Dr. Patel didn't just break David Harris, it unmade him. The grief for Sarah had been a tangible, crushing weight. The guilt had been a fire searing him from the inside out. But this new knowledge, this was something else entirely. It was a vacuum. It sucked the very marrow from his bones, leaving him a hollow, weightless shell. He walked out of the administrator's office, floated down the elevator, and drove his car back to the glass house in Terrytown. He was, in the most profound and terrible way, free. He was a man with no wife, no children, and no future. He was a ghost in his own life. He walked into the house. Sarah's pays, the ones from that last awful day, were long dead, their petals a brown, papery confetti on the marble console. He walked past the living room, through his empty office, and up the stairs. He went to the sage-green nursery. 2 empty cribs stood waiting. 2 matching mobiles, little hand-knitted lambs, hung in the still air. All the love, all the hope, all the 7-year-long desperation that had been poured into this room, it was for nothing. His betrayal, his lies, the stress he was convinced had triggered Sarah's fatal decline. He had done it all. Sacrificed his wife for children who were not even his. He had burned his world to the ground to protect a family that never existed. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall between the 2 cribs. He did not cry. He was beyond tears. He sat there as the sun set, the room plunging into darkness, and he felt the man he was. David Harris, the brilliant architect, the loving husband, the fraud, finally mercifully die. A new man rose in his place, a man with nothing left to lose. And a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous and most focused man in the world. This new man had only one purpose: to dismantle the past. He was an architect, after all. He had built this life. Now he would design its demolition. At 7 a.m. he called his lawyer. Stephen Carr was David's corporate attorney, a man who navigated the brutal world of Austin real estate development with the cold precision of a shark. He was used to David's frantic calls about zoning laws and permit bureaucracy. He was not prepared for this. He met David in his sterile downtown office. "David," Stephen said, his face a practiced mask of sympathy. I was so sorry to hear about Sarah. It's a tragedy. I've already started the paperwork for her estate probate." "Stop," David said. His voice was flat, dead. "That's not why I'm here." David laid out the entire story. The IVF, the HELP syndrome, the death, the twins, and finally the genetic report. Stephen Carr, a man who had seen billion-dollar deals collapse and partners backstab each other, was speechless. He took off his glasses, polished them, and looked at his client. "My God, David, Austin IVF, they are finished." "That's your first job," David said. "I want you to file a wrongful death suit. I want you to file for catastrophic malpractice. I want you to find every dollar they have and every dollar their insurance has, and I want you to take it. We're going to create a memorial fund. The Sarah Jenkins Harris Memorial Fund. It will fund HELPI syndrome research and support families destroyed by fertility clinic negligence. I want you to ruin them, Stephen. Not for me, for her. Carr nodded slowly, the shark in him smelling blood. It will be a landmark case. It will be done. Second, David continued, his eyes like chips of ice. Chloe Sanders. The Mistress, Carr said, his tone shifting to distaste. Messy. She'll have to be paid off. She's pregnant. I assume she'll claim... She is claiming. She's claiming it's mine. I don't think it is. A paternity test. Then we can... No, David interrupted. Not just a test. I want to know everything. You use my money. You hire the best private investigator in this state. I want her keycard records from the firm for the last 6 months. I want her expense reports. I want her credit card statements, her Uber receipts, her hotel stays. I want to know who she was with every single night she wasn't with me. She was hedging her bets, Stephen. I was just one of her prospects. I want to know who the other one was. Carr looked at the man in front of him. This was not the grieving widower hour. This was an executioner. This isn't just a legal strategy, David. This is a reckoning. Call it whatever you want, David said, standing up. Just get it done, and find the real parents of those children. I want to meet them. The meeting with Chloe was set for 3 days later. The investigator was fast. David had the file. It was worse and better than he could have imagined. He chose a bright, soulless Starbucks on a busy corner, a place with no memories and no shadows. She walked in, and David was struck by the audacity of her performance. She wasn't dressed in black. She was wearing a cream-colored, expensive-looking pantsuit, an outfit for a new beginning. Her hand was resting possessively on her barely there bump. She was not here to grieve with him. She was here to negotiate the terms of her new life. David, she said, her voice a soft purr of manufactured sympathy. She sat down, her expensive bag clicking on the table. I'm so glad you're finally ready to see reason. I know you're in pain. I truly do. But this, she caressed her stomach, is a blessing, a fresh start for us. I've already had my lawyer draft some preliminary paperwork, a very generous consideration for our future. David just stirred his black coffee, the scraping of the wooden stick, the only sound. Chloe leaned in, her mask of sympathy tightening. Look, I know it's hard to see it now, but this is what Sarah would have wanted, for you to be happy. We can sell that mausoleum of a house. Find a gorgeous penthouse downtown. Just you, me, and our baby, our real family. David looked up. His eyes were so empty, so devoid of light that Chloe's smile faltered for a second. The twins aren't mine, Chloe. Her face froze. What? David, don't be cruel. Just because they're complications doesn't mean you can just... They're not my children. He repeated, his voice a monotone. There was a mix-up at the IVF clinic. A genetic test confirmed it. They belong to another man, another couple. I'm not their father. Chloe stared at him. She processed the information. Disbelief, confusion, and then the most profound, sickening relief. It started as a snort, a disbelieving puff of air. Then her shoulders started to shake. She covered her mouth, but it was no use. A high, ringing laugh burst out of her. People at other tables turned to look. "Oh my God!" she gasped, tears of actual mirth streaming from her eyes. She put her head down on the table, her body convulsing with laughter. "You're serious? Oh, David, that is priceless." She sat up, wiping her eyes, her face flushed with victory. You went through all that. You lost everything, for nothing, for someone else's brats. Oh my God, you really are the most pathetic fool I have ever met. She collected herself, taking a deep, shuddering breath. Her eyes were shining now, all traces of false sympathy gone, replaced by pure, predatory triumph. "Well," she said, straightening her jacket. "Wow, okay, that just makes things so much cleaner, doesn't it? All that baggage, poof, gone. It's just you, me, and this." She patted her stomach, her smile wide and genuine for the first time. "Our baby, our heir, the real Harris legacy." David just watched her, his expression unchanged. "You're right. It does make things cleaner." He slid a thick manila file across the table. Chloe's smile flickered. "What's that? The paperwork my lawyer sent?" "No," David said. "It's from my lawyer's investigator." She opened it. Her smile vanished. Inside were photographs, her kissing Alex Vance, a senior partner at the firm in the parking garage of the W Hotel. Hotel receipts expensed to the firm for nights she had told David she was working late. Credit card statements showing dinners at Uchi with Vance. "I was a fool," David said, his voice quiet, surgical. "I was so wrapped up in my own lies I couldn't see yours. You weren't in love with me, Chloe. You were just auditioning, seeing which partner at the firm would bite first. I was just plan A. How's plan B?" He slid a second document on top of the file. "The court order." I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her face turning a chalky white. "That's a court order for a prenatal paternity test," David said. "It names both me and Alex Vance as potential fathers. My lawyer, Stephen Carr, is very thorough. He sent a copy to Alex's lawyer and to Alex's wife about an hour ago." Chloe's world imploded. The color drained from her face. Her mouth opened, but only a small choking sound came out. This was a reckoning she had never anticipated. She had overplayed her hand, and now she had lost everything. "You laughed when my wife died," David said, standing up from the table. "You laughed when you found out my children weren't mine. Laugh now, Chloe." He left her there, a statue of her own ambition, the file open in front of her as the other patrons of the Starbucks watched her silent, frantic, and complete collapse. The paternity test a few weeks later confirmed it. The baby was Alex Vance's. Vance, in a desperate bid to save his own marriage and career, promptly denied everything, fired Chloe for gross professional misconduct, and had his wife's lawyer serve her with a cease and desist order. Chloe Sanders, who had gambled on landing a rich husband, was left pregnant, unemployed, and utterly alone, a pariah in the city she had tried to conquer. 2 days later, Dr. Miller facilitated the hardest meeting of David's life. Mark and Jessica Bishop looked like they had been hollowed out by a decade of grief. They were kind, gentle people from a small town outside Austin, and they looked at David with a terrifying, unreadable combination of pity, gratitude, and sorrow. "Mr. Harris," Jessica whispered, her hands knotted together. We don't know what to say. We are so sorry for your loss, for your wife, Sarah." David just knotted his throat too tight to speak. Dr. Miller led them all to the NICU. Nurse Brenda, her eyes soft with sympathy, was waiting. David stood back as Mark and Jessica approached the 2 incubators. Mark pressed his hand to the plastic of Oliver's isolate. He has my father's ears." He choked out tears instantly flooding his eyes. Jessica just stared at Olivia, her entire body shaking, a sound of pure, unadulterated awe escaping her. "She's real. Oh, Mark, after all this time, she's real." David watched them. He watched this pure, untainted love pour out of them. This was the first good, the first right thing that had happened since that last perfect Sunday. This was the family Oliver and Olivia were meant to have. We want to honor Sarah," Mark said, turning to David, his face a mess of tears and joy. We'd like Olivia's middle name to be Sarah, If that's okay with you." The dam broke. The first real tears of a grief so profound he hadn't been able to touch it, stung David's eyes. He nodded. Yes, she would. She would have liked that. He watched Nurse Brenda help Jessica hold her daughter for the first time. He watched Mark put a single finger into Oliver's tiny hand and watched the baby grip it. He was the outsider. He was the ghost. His role in this story was over. He turned unseen and walked out of the NICU, leaving the bishops to their miracle. The dismantling was swift. The lawsuit against Austin IVF settled for a staggering sum, bankrupting the clinic and making national news. The Sarah Jenkins Harris Memorial Fund was established the next day. David sold the glass house in Terrytown. He sold his partnership at the firm. He liquidated every stock, every bond, every last trace of his old life. His last stop was Margaret Jenkins's house. She opened the door. She had aged a decade. The Texas granite of her face was cracked, revealing a raw, bottomless grief. "Margaret," he said. He was holding a single cashier's check. She just stared at him, her eyes burning with a cold, pure hatred. "It's everything," he whispered, his voice breaking. "The house, the firm, the stocks. It's all I have left. It's for her, for you." He held it out. She looked at the check, then back at him. "Do you think this brings her back?" She hissed, her voice like gravel. "No, nothing does." "She loved you," Margaret said, and the words were a final damning verdict. "She knew. She told me the week before. She knew you were cheating and she was going to stay for the baby. Your lies, the stress, you and that. You did this. The doctors can call it help syndrome. I call it murder." David stood there and took it. He had no defense. "I know." She snatched the check from his hand. "Good. I hope you live 1,000 years, David, and I hope you remember her face and what you did to her, every single second of it." She slammed the door in his face. He was done. David Harris walked away. He got into an old used pickup truck he'd bought with the last of his cash. He had one bag in the passenger seat. He drove out of Austin, past the skyline he had helped to build. He didn't look back. He drove west into the vast, empty heart of Texas until the city was just a smear of light in his rear-view mirror. He stopped at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, a wind whipping dust across the road. He looked at his reflection in the dirty bathroom mirror. The man looking back was a stranger, gaunt, haunted, empty. The architect was gone. The husband was gone. The father was gone. All that was left was the ghost. He got back in the truck, pointed it toward the setting sun, and drove into the darkness. A man with no name, no past, and no future. Just the long, empty road. In the end, there were no winners. There was only the devastating wreckage of choices made in secret. David lost his wife, his children, and his entire identity. Chloe, who laughed at another's tragedy, found herself the star of her own, abandoned and ruined by the very ambition that drove her. But 2 lives, Oliver and Olivia, were saved from the rubble. They are to this day being raised by a loving, grateful family who never gave up hope. This story is a brutal reminder that a lie can't just build a new future. It can only annihilate the present. The truth, no matter how delayed, always finds its way to the surface. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who loves a story of twists and consequences, and subscribe to the channel for more true life drama every week. Let me know in the comments what you think. Was David's final act a form of redemption, or was it simply the last act of a coward? We'll see you in the next.
His mistress laughed at his pregnant wife's clothes. A year later, the millionaire bought the fashion company. Have you ever wondered what twists of fate might lie hidden in the ordinary moments of our lives? In this riveting real-life drama, a seemingly perfect marriage unravels when a brazen mistress mocks a pregnant wife's simple clothes only for destiny to take an astonishing turn a year later. Prepare for a tale of high-stakes, betrayal, quiet resilience, and the remarkable comeuppance that left even industry insiders stunned. This story is more than just a lesson about karma. It's a testament to how unwavering strength can triumph over the cruelest of betrayals. Stay tuned for an unforgettable journey filled with love, deception, and shocking revenge. Sophia Lewis Patterson was never the type to hog the spotlight. In her early 30s, she boasted a quiet confidence and radiant kindness that captured people's hearts more effectively than any flashy entrance. She worked as an elementary school teacher in the suburbs of Los Angeles, an ordinary life by most measures, yet happy in its own sweet simplicity. Married to Henry Patterson, a mid-level executive at a fast-growing tech startup, Sophia believed their life was set on a smooth, predictable course. For years, Henry had nurtured ambitions far grander than Sophia suspected. While she was content with a modest lifestyle, dates at local restaurants, cozy nights in with Netflix, and occasional weekend getaways, Henry dreamed of something else, rubbing elbows with the wealthy elite, luxury weekends in San Francisco, and forging connections with venture capitalists who would someday invest in his wild ideas. He saw himself as a future mogul, a name that might appear alongside the likes of Mark Zuckerberg or Bernard Arnault. Their marriage had been stable, if not always passionate, until the day Sophia discovered she was pregnant. In the beginning, Henry was thrilled, or so Sophia believed. She thought a baby would bring them closer. After all, friends and family had assured her that a child could transform a marriage into something richer, deeper, and more meaningful. So she envisioned a cozy future, baby strollers, family dinners, matching pajamas for holiday photos. Yet beneath the surface, Henry grew restless. The looming responsibilities of fatherhood weighed on him, clashing with the lifestyle of lavish parties and social climbing he'd been privately pursuing. He didn't want to be tied down to a mortgage in the suburbs or a minivan in the driveway. This was not the life he'd planned. When a promotional opportunity at his tech firm came up, Henry found himself thrust into a more frenetic world, a swirl of investor cocktails, dinner galas, and international conferences. Unbeknownst to Sophia, Henry began enjoying the flirtatious attention of several women at these social events. His ring often tucked away or his finger discreetly absent from the conversation, he felt a surge of confidence that he didn't experience at home anymore. At first, it was harmless banter or so, he told himself. Then it grew into whispered phone calls at odd hours, hidden text messages, and a mind that wandered far from the child growing in Sophia's womb. Meanwhile, Sophia's pregnancy progressed. She found comfort in teaching her third-grade class, where her students noticed the subtle glow in her cheeks. Principal Jill Horowitz, someone who had once worked with famous philanthropic organizations, led by people like Oprah Winfrey, took particular pride in how dedicated Sophia remained, even as her belly swelled. These were the happiest, yet also the most emotionally confusing days of Sophia's life. She sensed Henry's distance. The more she tried to reach out, the more he pulled away. Caught between her maternal instincts and her desire to keep the marriage intact, Sophia refused to pry. She convinced herself that Henry's attitude was merely work stress. She believed it would pass. After all, she had always known him to be ambitious. But ambition, unfortunately, has a talent for overshadowing love if nurtured in the wrong environment. And Henry had found exactly that environment in the glitzy social circle he was now frequenting. Little did Sophia know that in just a few months, Her entire world would come crashing down, all because of a single, humiliating moment that would change the course of her life forever. Bianca Rossi was an emerging star in the fashion world, or so she liked to boast. She was no household name like Anna Wintour, nor did she have the global influence of a designer like Donatella Versace, but she floated on the fringes of that glamorous circle. She'd built a modest following on Instagram by flaunting designer handbags and traveling to exotic locales. Bianca had a knack for dropping the right names and showing up at the right parties, ensuring that high society took notice of her impeccable style and razor-sharp wit. Henry first met Bianca at a launch party for a high-end tech product. He was there to represent his company, but Bianca, a fashion consultant, seemed more interested in the wealthy men roaming the room than the products on display. She zeroed in on Henry almost immediately. With her slinky cocktail dress, towering heels, and bright red lipstick, she exuded an effortless confidence that made Henry momentarily forget about the ring in his pocket and the baby at home. They exchanged small talk at the bar, Henry boasting about his company's growth and the investments they were courting, Bianca hinting at her collaborations with up-and-coming designers. She claimed she was good friends with Kylie Jenner, though in reality, she'd only once managed to snap a selfie with Kylie at a crowded La event. What she lacked in genuine connections, she made up for with a cunning ability to present illusions of grandeur. Over the next few weeks, Henry and Bianca started meeting in secret. Bianca was every bit the whirlwind of glamour that Henry craved. She introduced him to exclusive parties, invited him along to sample sales where one could snag a Fendi bag at a fraction of retail price, and whispered sweet nothings in his ear about the unstoppable success she believed him destined for. Henry, starved for validation, fell headlong into this affair without considering the emotional wreckage it would leave at home. Whenever Henry would return late at night smelling of expensive perfume, Sophia's stomach knotted. She worried that something was amiss, but Henry always had an excuse. Work meeting, client dinner. "You should rest," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "You're pregnant. I don't want you stressing out." She complied, trusting him because trust was all she had ever known in her relationship. But as Sophia's belly grew, Bianca's demands on Henry's time grew too. She nagged him to show her off in public, to come to her events, to dine at upscale restaurants. Henry, however, was reluctant to appear openly attached to Bianca, fearing gossip would spill into his professional life. Bianca, desperate for more attention, invited Henry to a runway show featuring an emerging designer that she claimed was on the verge of blowing up. It would be a perfect chance for Henry to expand his network, Bianca insisted. Henry agreed to attend, but only if he could bring a friend from the tech world to legitimize his presence. He didn't mention Sophia at all. He was terrified that if Bianca found out he was married and soon to be a father, the drama might drive her away. But ironically, it was Bianca's own arrogance that would expose Henry's double life in the most humiliating fashion, quite literally. The day of the fashion show arrived, a bright Sunday afternoon on Melrose Avenue. The designer was hosting the show in a repurposed warehouse with graffiti-splashed walls, blending edgy street art with high fashion. Models strutted in avant-garde outfits while music pounded through the loudspeakers. Henry felt out of place and electrified all at once. This was Bianca's turf, glamorous, chaotic, and full of fleeting opportunities to impress the right people. Bianca had insisted on wearing a figure-hugging black dress with diamond-studded accessories that glinted whenever the spotlight found her. She'd introduced Henry to various designers, stylists, and social media influencers, flaunting him as a promising tech genius. Henry basked in the flattering introductions. For a moment, he felt unstoppable. It was here, amid the swirl of champagne and camera flashes, that Henry's two worlds collided. Sophia, who had heard from a mutual friend that Henry might be at this event, decided against her better judgment to surprise her husband. She thought perhaps if she dressed up nicely and showed support for Henry's new social circle, it might bring them closer. So she slipped into the best outfit she could comfortably wear while pregnant, a loose-fitting maternity dress she'd found on sale at a local department store. It wasn't Chanel or Dolce & Gabbana, but it was the best she could afford, and it made her feel confident enough to step into a world she'd never known. When Sophia arrived, the show was in full swing. She navigated the crowd, looking for Henry. Eventually, she spotted him standing next to a stunning woman she immediately recognized from Instagram, Bianca Rossi. The two of them looked far more intimate than mere acquaintances. Confused and anxious, Sophia approached. At first, Henry froze. His eyes darted around, searching for an escape. Bianca, clueless about who Sophia was, offered a polite smile. That smile evaporated when Henry hesitantly introduced his visibly pregnant wife, stumbling over his words. Bianca blinked in shock. Her gaze drifted condescendingly down to Sophia's discount maternity dress, plain, floral printed cotton that clung to Sophia's expanded belly. Unable to contain her scorn, Bianca let out a derisive laugh. "Oh, so this is your wife," she drawled, her tone dripping with irony. "I didn't realize you were married. And pregnant too. Interesting choice of outfit, sweetie." Her laughter was sharp, echoing above the music. Heads turned. People around them paused to watch the exchange. Sophia felt the heat of humiliation rise from her stomach to her cheeks. Tears stung her eyes, but she tried to maintain composure. Henry, caught between horror and guilt, mumbled something about needing to talk in private, but the damage was done. Dozens of eyes had witnessed this excruciating moment. The runway lights seemed to spotlight Sophia's heartbreak, magnifying it for everyone to see. At that moment, Sophia realized that not only was her husband having an affair, but also that this mistress was mocking her for the simplest of things, her clothes, which symbolized her entire identity at that moment, a practical mother-to-be. Mortified, Sophia turned on her heel and hurried out, tears streaming. She didn't wait for Henry to follow. In a single scathing laugh, Bianca had stripped away all illusions of marital security. That laughter would echo in Sophia's mind long after she left the venue, fueling a transformation that would eventually shock even the cruelest skeptics. The aftermath of that humiliating encounter was immediate and painful. Sophia spent the next week in emotional limbo, replaying the scene over and over in her head: the unforgiving lights, Bianca's mocking smile, Henry's disloyalty. She could barely eat, her stomach roiling with anxiety and heartbreak, but she forced herself to be calm for the baby's sake. At least at school, her students and colleagues offered a sense of normalcy. Principal Horowitz, noticing Sophia's distress, encouraged her to take a few days off, but Sophia insisted on staying, finding solace in her students' bright faces. Henry's apologies flooded her phone in text messages and voicemails. He tried to come home earlier, attempted to look remorseful, but it was too late. Even if his tears were genuine, Sophia couldn't unhear Bianca's scornful laugh or the unspoken truth that Henry was living a double life. Sophia allowed Henry to stay in the house for the sake of practicality. She was too pregnant to manage an abrupt separation on her own, but she made it clear she wanted emotional distance. In a moment of desperation, Henry agreed to end things with Bianca. He blocked her number, or so he said, yet deep down, Sophia felt the severed trust might never be restored. She contemplated every path, from moving to a different city to filing for divorce as soon as the baby arrived. But there was a gentle part of her still hoping, however foolishly, that Henry might change. The tension at home grew unbearable. Dinner was a silent affair, with Sophia focusing on her meal and Henry occasionally looking up, searching for any sign of forgiveness. Sometimes he'd sigh and say, "I'm sorry, Soph," but the words rang hollow. In bed, they slept with their backs turned. Meanwhile, Henry's phone pinged occasionally with messages from unfamiliar numbers. Sophia didn't ask. She was too exhausted to fight. One night, after Henry had gone to bed, Sophia found herself awake, staring at the ceiling. She recalled Bianca's haughty expression, that derisive laughter that cut to her core. Her entire identity felt reduced to the frumpy, pregnant wife. She realized her own vulnerability. She'd let Henry's ambitions overshadow her own sense of self. She was no fashion icon, but that didn't give anyone the right to mock her. The more she thought about it, the more she felt a rising indignation at the humiliation, not just the affair. The next day, she opened her laptop and began researching. She learned about maternity fashion lines, about the behind-the-scenes workings of apparel companies. She even discovered how smaller brands sometimes went bankrupt or got bought out. The spark of an idea began to form. She hadn't the faintest clue how to start a business, let alone break into fashion. But she had one big advantage. She knew she had the empathy and passion to create something for women in her situation, mothers, pregnant women, or anyone who simply wanted affordable comfort without scorn. Days turned into weeks, and her baby bump continued to grow. Henry continued to drown in guilt, uncertain how to mend the chasm he'd created. But Sophia's mind was already leaving him behind, quietly forging a future in which she could reclaim her dignity. She had no illusions this journey would be easy or quick. Still, something in her heart told her that change, real, transformative change, was within reach. Sophia didn't know it yet, but this was the seed of her eventual triumph, a quiet rebellion that would soon echo far beyond the four walls of their troubled home. Sophia went into labor on a crisp winter morning. The drive to the hospital was tense, with Henry behind the wheel and Sophia breathing through contractions in the passenger seat. Fear mingled with hope in her mind. She worried about the baby's health, about how different life would be, and whether Henry's presence meant they might still salvage some semblance of family. After a long night of labor, Sophia gave birth to a healthy baby girl they named Amelia. For a fleeting moment in the hospital room, the sight of Amelia's bright eyes and tiny fingers brought Henry and Sophia together in a shared sense of wonder. They wept tears of joy, forgetting the betrayal that loomed over them. It was a small pocket of pure love, a momentary truce in a war of heartbreak and distrust. Once they brought Amelia home, reality reasserted itself. Sleepless nights took their toll. Henry tried to help with midnight feedings, but the tension between them remained. Sophia was exhausted physically, emotionally, spiritually. Still, in the quiet hours of the night cradling Amelia, she couldn't stop thinking about her research on maternity fashion. She even jotted down ideas in a small notebook whenever Amelia dozed off. The more she read, the more she recognized a glaring gap in the market. Stylish, budget-friendly clothes for pregnant women who wanted to feel confident but didn't have the budget for designer labels. On a whim, she reached out to a local seamstress named Helen Cooper, an elderly woman who had once worked for famed designers in her youth, including an internship with the legendary Diane von Furstenberg. Helen had settled into a humble life, crafting custom dresses for local brides. She and Sophia connected immediately over tea in Helen's small studio. Sophia shared her vision, flipping through the sketches she'd made, though she was hardly a professional designer. Helen, surprisingly enthusiastic, agreed to stitch together a few prototype pieces if Sophia could provide fabrics. It felt surreal to see her simple pencil sketches come to life in actual garments. When Sophia tried them on, still wearing her post-pregnancy belly, she felt a renewed sense of self. The clothes, while basic, fit well and looked elegant. Even Henry remarked, "You look nice," in a surprisingly gentle tone. Buoyed by this small success, Sophia pushed further. She used her savings, originally set aside for a small family vacation that no longer seemed feasible, to purchase more fabric. Over the next few months, in between nursing Amelia and teaching classes at the elementary school, Sophia worked on designing a small line of comfortable but chic maternity dresses. Helen and a handful of other local seamstresses helped assemble them. Before Sophia knew it, she had a mini collection ready for a local artisan fair. Sophia showcased her designs under the label Amelia and Company, a tribute to her daughter and the hope she represented. The response at the fair was modest yet heartening. Several pregnant women stopped by her booth, delighted to find stylish pieces at reasonable prices. Word spread slowly but steadily. Even a local boutique owner expressed interest in stocking Sophia's line. Amid this quiet progress, Henry remained distant, grappling with his own guilt and confusion about the future. But for the first time since her pregnancy began, Sophia felt an empowering sense of possibility, a silent confidence that perhaps she did not need Henry's validation or the approval of some high society circle. She could forge her own path, one stitch at a time. The turning point came a few months later when Sophia received an unexpected phone call from a figure she never expected to speak to again, Caroline Hart, a well-known fashion columnist who sometimes featured local talents in her blog. Caroline was no Anna Wintour, but she held significant sway in certain West Coast-style circles. She'd gotten Sophia's number from the boutique owner, who was now carrying the Amelia and Company line. Caroline's voice crackled through the phone, brimming with curiosity. "I heard you're doing something new with maternity wear," she said. "Is it true you're a full-time teacher who's basically taught herself how to design clothes? I'd love to learn more. Might make a fascinating story for my readers." A whirlwind followed. Caroline visited Sophia's makeshift studio, a corner of her living room, where fabrics hung on cheap plastic racks. Amelia, now a few months old, cooed in a bassinet nearby, while Sophia and Caroline discussed designs. Intrigued, Caroline tried on a few pieces. Though not pregnant, she appreciated how the clothes managed to flatter a range of body types. "Your aesthetic is so refreshingly unpretentious," Caroline mused, jotting notes in her phone. "But you have to figure out how to scale. If you want to compete with big brands, you'll need a bigger operation and, frankly, a more sophisticated marketing strategy." Sophia swallowed, thinking about her meager savings and the responsibilities of her teaching job. "I'm open to advice," she admitted. "I just don't know where to start." Caroline leaned forward, a sly grin on her face. "I have connections. I can introduce you to a friend of mine, Marcus Lee, a venture capitalist who's also dabbling in fashion tech. He might be interested in investing if he sees the potential, but you have to prove you're serious. Show him your business plan, your growth strategy, maybe a pitch deck with some numbers." The words venture capitalist brought a jolt of recognition. That was Henry's world. Panic flitted through Sophia at the idea of stepping into those circles again. But her pride and a growing sense of determination refused to let that fear take root. If anything, maybe it was poetic justice that the same environment Henry had sought for his own ambitions could now offer her a step up. And so began Sophia's late-night crash course in entrepreneurship. She read business articles, watched YouTube tutorials on creating pitch decks, and studied examples of successful small fashion brands. She discovered how some had been acquired by larger companies or had used crowdfunding to build a niche following. Through it all, Caroline provided guidance, connecting Sophia to people who understood the intricacies of the fashion world and the logistics of scaling a brand. One day, Henry walked into the living room to find Sophia hunched over her laptop at 2am, diagrams and business notes scattered around her. He blinked in surprise, realizing how serious she was about this project. "You're really doing this," he said quietly. Sophia looked up. She didn't scowl or smile. Her voice was calm, but filled with an undercurrent of resolute fire. I want to make something of my own, and I won't let anyone belittle me again. Henry nodded, his eyes flickering with something like shame and maybe a tinge of awe. He offered no words of encouragement, but he also didn't stand in her way. For now, that was enough. Thus, with an unlikely mentor in Caroline Hart and a newborn fueling her every step, Sophia's journey into the fashion industry began in earnest. And unbeknownst to both Henry and Bianca, it was a journey that would soon shake the foundations of the very social circles they held in such high esteem. Caroline made good on her promise. She arranged for Sophia to present her fledgling brand to Marcus Lee and a small group of investors at an informal gathering in Beverly Hills. The event, held at a minimalist penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooked the shimmering sprawl of Los Angeles. Women in sharp blazers and men in tailored suits mingled over canapes, discussing everything from cryptocurrency to eco-friendly textiles. As Sophia entered, cradling a garment bag with a few of her best pieces, she couldn't help but recall that humiliating day of the fashion show. The glitz, the designer outfits, the sense of belonging only if you had the right credentials. It was all so alien. Yet this time she felt a quiet confidence. She'd poured her soul into Amelia and company. She believed in the mission of giving pregnant women more options beyond the overpriced or dowdy, and she had a plan. Caroline introduced Sophia to Marcus Lee, a bespectacled man in his 40s who exuded a calm but keen intensity. Sophia delivered her practiced pitch, highlighting the gap in the market, her initial sales at the local boutique, and her vision for expanding into online retail. She also showed him a brief projection of potential profit margins and growth. Marcus listened intently, occasionally tapping notes into his tablet. "Your story is compelling," he said. "I like investing in underdogs who disrupt a market, but I'll need to see more detailed figures, and you'll need a stronger marketing approach. Are you open to a partnership?" Sophia's stomach flipped with excitement. She responded earnestly, "I'm open to anything that helps Amelia and company grow while staying true to its core mission." Marcus nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "We can talk further. Let's schedule a follow-up." Before the night ended, Sophia navigated the crowd to find Caroline, eager to share the good news. As she passed through the throng, she froze. Standing near a marble table was none other than Bianca Rossi, flanked by two wealthy older men. Bianca wore a designer jumpsuit and sipped champagne as she laughed about something one of the men said. Sophia's pulse quickened. She considered ducking away, but then Bianca locked eyes with her. Confusion flitted across Bianca's face, quickly replaced by recognition. For a split second, it seemed Bianca might pretend not to know her. But curiosity got the better of her. She sauntered over, her hips swaying. "Well, well," Bianca drawled. "Look who's here." "Didn't expect to see you, Sophia," mixing with the big names. "I see you're dressed better this time." She cast a quick glance at Sophia's outfit, a sleek black dress from her own line, discreetly tailored to fit her postpartum figure. Sophia refused to cower. "Hello, Bianca," she said evenly. "I'm here on business, actually, pitching my maternity wear line. It's called Amelia and Company. You might have heard of it soon enough." She let the implied challenge hang in the air. Bianca's eyes narrowed, a flicker of disdain crossing her features. "You're full of surprises," she said before tossing back her champagne. "I suppose I'll see you around." Her tone was dismissive, but the tension was electric. Sophia watched Bianca retreat, a swirl of designer perfume trailing behind her. The memory of Bianca's mocking laughter still stung, but Sophia felt a surge of vindication. She had stood up for herself, showing Bianca she was neither defeated nor defined by that infamous insult. If only either of them had known how their destinies would intertwine again, and that the next encounter would be far more explosive. In the months that followed, Sophia's world transformed at a breakneck pace. Marcus Lee decided to invest a modest sum to bolster Amelia and Company's online presence and help refine the product line. With that funding, Sophia hired a small team, a marketing specialist, a social media manager, and a dedicated production coordinator to work with local seamstresses. Although the operation remained humble, it now had structure and expert guidance. Caroline Hart penned a glowing feature about Amelia and Company in her fashion column. Titled From Classroom to Catwalk, One Mother's Journey, it highlighted Sophia's struggles and the brand's promise. Orders began pouring in online, and soon talk of Amelia and Company reached beyond California. They started shipping garments nationwide. Pregnant women from New York to Texas shared selfies in Amelia and Company outfits, praising the comfort and elegance. On Instagram, a grassroots community was forming, with followers actively rooting for Sophia's success. While the business blossomed, Sophia's personal life remained complicated. She and Henry coexisted under the same roof, co-parenting baby Amelia. Henry, seeing Sophia's star rising, appeared torn between envy and residual guilt. Though he occasionally tried to offer business advice, usually about attracting more investors, Sophia often brushed it aside. She'd learned the hard way that Henry's ambitions served him first and foremost. Yet, as the money started coming in, Henry couldn't help but be impressed. So were his colleagues in the tech world, some of whom had once laughed off Sophia's little project. Now, seeing coverage in various fashion blogs and magazines, they realized she was onto something. Henry found himself in an odd position. His wife was becoming a success story, one with clout in circles he once craved acceptance from. The real coup came when the buyer from a well-known department store reached out. She'd seen a piece about Sophia's line in a parenting magazine and was interested in placing a large order for their maternity section. It was a dream deal for any emerging brand. If the partnership went through, Amelia and Company would become a recognized name in mainstream retail. Still, the buyer wanted to see a bigger collection, including some postpartum-friendly outfits and nursing tops, a bold expansion that required more financing and production capacity. Sophia found herself at a crossroads: accept the buyer's challenge, scale up fast, or risk missing a golden opportunity. Marcus was on board, but demanded a clear plan. The next step was to set up meetings with bigger investors. She'd need more capital to ensure they could fulfill the department store's requirements without sacrificing quality. In the midst of these negotiations, Caroline brought an unexpected piece of news. One of the fashion companies rumored to be struggling was Mandalay Couture, a regional firm known for high-end designs and occasional celebrity endorsements. They had branched into maternity wear a few years back, but hadn't found success. Word on the street was that Mandalay was hemorrhaging money and might look for a buyout. Sophia felt her heart flutter. Mandalay Couture had once collaborated with notable names, including an event with Gigi Hadid. If Amelia and Company could acquire Mandalay, absorb their assets, possibly their design team, then combine that with Sophia's new mainstream deals, it could be a massive leap forward. But it also carried huge risk. She'd never orchestrated a corporate acquisition in her life. Nonetheless, the seed was planted. Sophia, once mocked for her cheap maternity clothes, was now in a position to potentially buy a recognized brand. The irony and poetic justice was not lost on her. She wondered if Bianca, who prided herself on rubbing elbows with all the right fashion players, would ever see this coming. Sophia's negotiation with Mandalay Couture began quietly. Through Caroline's connections, she was introduced to the CFO, who confirmed the company's dire financial state. They were on the hunt for a lifeline, and while they were initially skeptical about partnering with a smaller brand, Sophia's investor backing and rising clout made them consider the possibility more seriously. A combined Amelia and Company Manderley brand could potentially cater to both high-end and affordable segments, bridging an unusual but potentially profitable gap in the market. Simultaneously, Caroline recommended a corporate lawyer named Vanessa Burke, who had worked with many startups and established designers alike, including Rihanna's early Fenty ventures. Vanessa guided Sophia through the legal intricacies of mergers and acquisitions, drafting preliminary offers and analyzing Manderley's finances. The more Sophia learned, the more daunting the task seemed, but something in her refused to back down. The memory of Bianca's humiliating laugh still lingered like a ghost. One evening, after putting Amelia to bed, Sophia was reviewing acquisition documents when her phone buzzed. It was Henry, who was out at a networking dinner. She hesitated, still not fully trusting him, but answered anyway. "I ran into Bianca tonight," Henry said abruptly, his voice breathy with nerves. "She's apparently doing consulting work for Manderley Couture, helping them rebrand or something." He exhaled. "She mentioned she heard rumors of an upcoming buyout." "I didn't say anything, but, Soph, it looks like you two might end up crossing paths again, especially if you go through with acquiring Manderley." Sophia's heart pounded. She'd avoided direct confrontation with Bianca since that night at the investor event. Now, the woman who had mocked her was poised to become part of the company Sophia intended to buy. "Thanks for the heads up," she said coolly. "I'll handle it." And handle it she did. At the next meeting with Manderley's board, Bianca Rossi was in attendance, listed as an independent consultant. She walked into the conference room at a downtown La high-rise, wearing a crisp white blazer and designer stilettos, her expression immediately souring upon seeing Sophia. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The tension was palpable as the men and women around the table exchanged curious glances. Bianca, regaining composure, plastered on a professional smile. "Good afternoon, everyone," she greeted. Turning to Sophia, she said in an almost sugary tone, "Sophia, how interesting to meet again under these circumstances." Sophia met her gaze without flinching. "Yes, quite the turn of events," she replied, smiling back. "Shall we begin?" The meeting was a roller coaster of proposals, negotiations, and strategic talk. Manderley's executives were eager to see the specifics of Amelia and company's plans for expansion. Sophia maintained her composure throughout, carefully outlining how she envisioned the merged brand capturing both luxury and affordable segments of the maternity market. Bianca, seated at the far end of the table, asked pointed questions, clearly probing for weaknesses, but Sophia had done her homework. With Vanessa Burke at her side, she responded to every inquiry with calm precision. Still, Bianca radiated hostility. Once the meeting concluded, she cornered Sophia in the hallway. "I don't know what your angle is," she hissed, "but don't think for a second I'm going to let you waltz in and ruin everything I've worked for at Manderley." Sophia regarded Bianca's perfectly made-up face, recalling how once upon a time she had been intimidated by such a woman, but she no longer feared the sneers or the cruelty. In a measured tone, she said, "I'm not here to ruin anything, Bianca. I'm here to do business. If your contributions to Manderley are valuable, then your role should remain secure. But if you think insulting me again will scare me off, you've severely underestimated me." She turned and walked away, heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. A wave of triumph swept over her as she left Bianca standing there, speechless. And so, the stage was set for a final showdown between two women whose lives had become inextricably entangled. The acquisition was on the horizon, and the next few weeks would determine the fate of Manderley Couture and whether Sophia would finally get the justice she deserved. Negotiations for the Manderley Couture acquisition escalated quickly. Marcus Lee helped secure additional funding, seeing the merger as a strategic power move that could catapult Amelia and company onto the international stage. The plan was bold: maintain the Manderley name for high-end lines, while integrating Amelia and Company as its more affordable sister brand. Together, they could cover the entire spectrum of maternity fashion luxury runway pieces to everyday essentials. Caroline Hart wrote a series of updates in her column, fueling public interest. She framed it as a classic underdog story: an elementary school teacher turned fashion entrepreneur poised to take over a struggling couture house. Bloggers and influencers picked up the narrative, generating even more buzz. Pre-orders surged for the existing Amelia and Company line. At the same time, rumors swirled about Manderley's dire financial state, with some industry experts openly skeptical that even a promising upstart like Amelia and Company could save it. In the thick of it all, Sophia hardly had time to sleep. Between her teaching responsibilities, raising Amelia, and negotiating the acquisition, she was perpetually on the brink of exhaustion. Principal Horowitz showed great compassion, offering extended leave if Sophia needed it. But Sophia clung to her teaching job, finding solace in the routine and the students who didn't care about corporate deals or vengeful mistresses. Meanwhile, Henry hovered at the edges. He occasionally offered to watch Amelia so Sophia could attend late-night meetings, a gesture she accepted for practicality's sake. Their relationship remained strained. They hadn't slept in the same bed for months. But now, even Henry began to see that Sophia's ambition matched, if not surpassed, his own. In some ways, he admired her newfound strength. Still, his guilt lingered. Sometimes he caught Sophia in quiet moments, feeding Amelia in the nursery or reviewing financial documents, and he wished he could rewind time. Finally, the big day arrived, the official signing of the acquisition contract. The ceremony was set for a morning in a downtown law office, a modest affair with just the essential parties present. Manderley's CFO and board members, Sophia and her lawyer Vanessa, and Marcus Lee. Bianca, in her role as a consultant, was conspicuously absent from the official signatories but was hovering around. She paced in the corridor, occasionally shooting icy glares through the glass walls. The formalities took hours, with each page scrutinized, initialed, and stamped. When the last signature was penned, the CFO shook Sophia's hand. "Congratulations," he said with genuine relief. "Welcome to Manderley Couture." Sophia smiled, allowing herself a rare moment of satisfaction. "Thank you. I hope we can bring the brand back to its former glory, and then some." As they began packing up, Bianca stormed in, her face contorted with outrage. "You can't just come in here and take over," she hissed at Sophia, ignoring the others. "I built trust with these people. I introduced them to valuable clients. My relationships are what kept them afloat until now. And you think you can just wave your pen around and own it all?" Sophia squared her shoulders. "I'm not taking anything away from you, Bianca. This deal was made to save Manderley. If you've truly contributed, you have nothing to fear." Bianca's eyes blazed. "I won't let you humiliate me." Sophia held her gaze, calm as still water. "I'm not the one who humiliated you, but I remember how you treated me. I remember you mocking my clothes, my pregnancy. So let's be clear, I won't be bullied again, ever." With that, Sophia turned on her heel, signing documents in hand, surrounded by her team. Bianca stood there, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms, watching as the pregnant wife she once scorned walked away now, the owner of the very company Bianca thought would be her ticket to success. Within days of the acquisition, radical changes swept through Manderley Couture. Sophia wasted no time implementing her vision. The expensive, rarely profitable lines were scaled back, while a new emphasis was placed on practical yet stylish maternity pieces inspired by Amelia and Company's best sellers. Some of Manderley's long-standing employees grumbled, initially fearful of losing the luxury reputation, but many also recognized the brand needed a drastic shift to survive. The tension between Sophia and Bianca became an open secret. Bianca's role as a consultant depended on the board's decision, which was now heavily influenced by Sophia. Some expected Sophia to fire Bianca on the spot, but she didn't. Whether it was out of caution, strategy, or a desire to demonstrate fairness, she let Bianca stay on a short-term contract. Bianca was tasked with forging partnerships with high-end clients and leveraging her influencer connections. Despite her personal animosity, Bianca was, after all, well connected within certain circles. Yet Bianca's resentment festered. She maneuvered behind the scenes, whispering to top designers and potential investors that Sophia's changes would degrade the Mandalay name. She even met with Henry a few times, claiming she wanted to smooth things over. Henry, intrigued by potential new deals but still harboring guilt about the past, agreed to these meetings more out of curiosity than loyalty to Bianca. Little did he know that Bianca's plan was to exploit any lingering tensions to her advantage. Meanwhile, Sophia thrived under pressure, driven by a deep desire to prove herself. Sales from the combined brand, rebranded as Mandalay by Amelia and Company, soared. New lines launched, featuring an array of sizes, fabrics, and silhouettes, all designed to celebrate the beauty of motherhood. Influencers began posting about the brand on Instagram, praising the comfortable yet stylish pieces. Even a few celebrities like the actress Emily Blunt, known for championing motherhood and women in film, were photographed wearing the line, generating a flood of media coverage. One afternoon, Caroline Hart asked Sophia to join a roundtable discussion featuring prominent women in the fashion industry, including real-life heavyweights like Tory Burch and Rebecca Minkoff. This event, a highlight during Los Angeles Fashion Week, would give Sophia a massive platform to share her brand's mission. Overwhelmed by the opportunity, Sophia prepared meticulously, crafting talking points about her journey from elementary school teacher to fashion entrepreneur. The event turned out to be a triumph. Sophia spoke passionately about motherhood, inclusivity, and the importance of accessible design. The audience was rapt. Industry insiders took notice. By the end of the discussion, it was clear that the Mandalay Amelia and Company merger was forging a new path in maternity fashion, one that even the skeptics now had to respect. Amid the applause, Sophia caught a glimpse of Bianca lurking in the crowd, her expression unreadable. That night, while tucking Amelia into bed, Sophia felt an unshakable sense of foreboding. Success always came with enemies. She knew Bianca was still seething, and Henry's divided loyalties could be a ticking time bomb. Yet, for the moment, she let herself celebrate. She'd built something no one could mock as cheap or unworthy. She had faced down public humiliation, heartbreak, and betrayal, and now stood on a stage beside established industry names. The future felt wide open, but the final reckoning was still ahead, and it would be more dramatic than Sophia could ever anticipate. In a matter of months, Mandalay by Amelia and Company skyrocketed to mainstream popularity, smashing quarterly revenue targets and garnering accolades from both business journals and fashion critics. Suddenly, Henry found himself overshadowed by his wife's meteoric rise. His own tech startup had hit a rough patch, losing a major investor to a competitor. Meanwhile, Bianca's manipulations behind the scenes proved fruitless. Employees at Mandalay respected Sophia's authentic leadership, and many found Bianca's tactics distasteful. Desperate, Bianca tried one last ploy. She leaked rumors to fashion blogs that Sophia was exploiting pregnant women for profit, and that the brand's so-called affordable prices still had high markups. The rumor caused a brief stir, but Sophia addressed it head-on with full transparency about the brand's manufacturing costs and fair labor practices. With that, Bianca's credibility plummeted. Faced with the undeniable success of the new lines, the board didn't renew her contract. She was effectively exiled from the company she'd hoped to claim as her domain. A week later, Henry's tech startup collapsed. Unable to secure emergency funding, he faced a personal financial crisis and turned to Sophia in a last-ditch plea for help. "Soph, I know things have been horrible between us," he said, his voice trembling with humiliation, "but I'm broke. I can't pay my own bills. Can you lend me some money until I get back on my feet?" Sophia regarded him with a mixture of pity and detachment. Once, she would have done anything to save him her husband, the father of her child, but that was before the betrayal. She'd grown into a woman who understood her worth. "I'll make sure Amelia's needs are always met. But as for bailing you out personally, I'm sorry, Henry. I have to think about what's best for my daughter and myself." Shattered, Henry could only nod. He moved into a friend's spare room, leaving the home to Sophia and Amelia. Over time, he'd realize how profoundly he'd underestimated her strength and how his betrayal had sown the seeds of his own downfall. As for Bianca, she found herself blacklisted in many of the same circles where she once flaunted her status. Word spread of her underhanded attempts to sabotage Sophia, and potential clients were hesitant to associate with someone so toxic. In a twist of fate, Bianca ended up wearing off-brand dresses, living in a smaller apartment, and posting fewer Instagram updates, her once lavish world reduced to echoes of what it had been. Sophia, on the other hand, moved forward with grace. She expanded Mandalay by Amelia and Company internationally, striking deals in Europe and Asia. Celebrities praised the brand's commitment to comfort and style. Caroline Hart was inundated with interview requests for Sophia, who had become an inspiring figure, proof that resilience and empathy could triumph over malice. One sunny afternoon, Sophia found herself at a major fashion event in Paris, walking through a gallery of designs inspired by motherhood. As she toured the exhibit, she recalled that moment years ago, standing humiliated in a cheap maternity dress while Bianca laughed at her. A wave of gratitude washed over her, gratitude for the journey, for the lessons learned, and for the karma that had come full circle. She glanced down at her phone, where a photo of Amelia, now a bubbly toddler, flashed on the screen. She smiled. The story that began with heartbreak had transformed into a powerful message. No one has the right to mock another's struggles, and sometimes the sweetest form of justice is simply living out your dreams. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling the Parisian air. The past was behind her: Henry's betrayal, Bianca's ridicule, the sleepless nights of doubt. Here, in the City of Lights, she stood as the CEO of a flourishing fashion empire, a devoted mother, and a woman who had reclaimed her dignity. The karma was complete. Thank you for joining us on this dramatic journey of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. Sophia's story reminds us that what appears as a crushing defeat can become the catalyst for our greatest triumph. From enduring the scorn of a callous mistress to owning the very fashion house that once sneered at her, Sophia showed us the power of quiet determination. Her evolution from a humiliated wife to a formidable CEO proves that karma never forgets. If this story moved you, be sure to hit that like button and share it with your friends who appreciate a real-life tale of sweet, sweet revenge. And if you want to keep up with more incredible stories just like this, subscribe to our channel so you never miss a single twist or turn. Your support keeps these captivating narratives coming, so thank you for watching and see you in our next video.